From the lore material I knew, psychers in this universe can easily distinguish their kin apart from the mundane masses with their psychic senses. Aradus had made it plain with his actions that I did not register as a psyker to his senses. Unfortunately, that could not explain my abilities nor my success in communicating with him via psychic means. It had spooked him so much he was prepared to shoot me with his last pistol. Being a civilian all my life, I was at a loss of what to do in this tense situation. Just as things were about to turn from bad to worse, Neandra appeared out of nowhere and took control of the situation. The Imperial assassin disarmed Aradus in the blink of an eye and sat him down back on his dining chair. Her frigid face had the slightest hint of exasperation as she was eyeing me the whole time while performing the incredible feat with a flawless motion. I could read her mind without even trying. In modern layman terms, it would be the equivalent of asking, "What the hell are you doing, you noob?" Master Rain. Neandra calmly addressed the distraught astropath. "Do not be alarmed. I can assure you SYRINE is not an enemy of the throne." After hearing those words, Aradus took his senses off me and turned to Neandra to validate how much he can trust her on that statement. It was at this moment someone opened the main door. A squad of stormtroopers stepped in, a grizzled man leading at the front as the sound of their military boots echoed in the living quarter. The squad's outfit and wardrobe was a match from the old Kazrin box when one used to be able to get a squad of 10 metal miniatures in the package, carapace armor draped over body glove and hashot lasguns at the ready. The sergeant was a man who had the look of special forces written all over him. His squarish jaw and the way he walked simply screamed elite militarism. Repeating one of the biggest cliches of the grimdark universe, the man was the only one in the squad who was not wearing a helmet. "Is everything all right?" the sergeant asked, his tone of voice firm and respectful but unwavering. He was the only one who was not holding a weapon, though his right hand hovered just above the hashot las pistol holstered on his belt. The rest of the stormtroopers fanned out behind him in well-trained tactical spacing. "Master Rain, please explain the misunderstanding," Neandra said while stepping back from the astropath in her attempt to de-escalate the situation. Though from my understanding of her capabilities, a distance of a few meters might as well be face-to-face contact for the Imperial assassin. Aradus started talking with the sergeant, but my mind was fast drifting with the latest revelation. How was it possible I didn't register as a psyker from the astropath's point of view? All the abilities I used seemed psychic in nature. Dumbfounded, I raised my left palm and looked into it and found I couldn't help myself from marveling at the flawless porcelain skin. Just as I was thinking of what I won't do to get a girlfriend with such fine skin in my previous life, an idea crept into my head. Wait, can I analyze myself? The sudden realization of such a potential struck me like lightning. With a staggering mind, I used Analytica on myself. The world seemed to freeze for a while before words started forming in my vision. Name, SYRINE, Primarch Minoris, Psychopassive, Abnormal Existence. Looking at the words and their implication, I felt like my body wanted to tremble, except it could not. As if rejecting an order from a lower authority, this body refused to convulse. The sensation of such incongruity triggered my instinct to vomit, but again, the action did not happen. Primarch Minoris? My mind went wild on that revelation. The Primarchs were genetically engineered transhuman sons of the Emperor of Mankind. They are a huge part of the lore of the grimdark universe. 21 owned to be created, these beings were intended to be the immortal and superhuman generals who commanded the Space Marine legions for Emperor's great crusade to reunite the scattered human race beneath his leadership. A memory surfaced into my mind as I struggled to organize my thoughts. It was from that shocking moment when Sister Alicia suddenly knelt in front of me. "You must be the prophesied true daughter of the Emperor that he unholy terror has sent to lead us." The Palatine had said, so SYRINE was really a true bona fide daughter of the fricking Emperor level of existence? But there was never any mention of any Primarch Minoris in the lore I knew, let alone a female Primarch who was normal human size and stature. Since most Primarchs were basically super transhuman beings towering over the normal transhuman Space Marines averaging 7 feet in height, that would render her looking like a doll in front of her brothers. Recalling all the information I had on the subject matter, the only loyalist Primarch that was still alive, active and kicking at the end of the 41st millennium in the grimdark universe was none other than Robute Guilliman of the Ultramarines, affectionately known in my gaming circle with funny nicknames such as Girly Man or Ultra Papa Smurf. the latter being a reference of his Legion heraldry color being an unfortunate match with a bunch of tiny blue creatures from a happier universe. Guilliman himself had actually been kept in a stasis field for 10,000 years after being fatally wounded in a battle and was recently resurrected to continue the plot, but that was a long story too convoluted to be told here. That said, having faced Guilliman himself multiple times on the tabletop game myself, one thing was very obvious to me: written clearly on the Primarch status sheet was monster. That would indirectly mean whatever this Primarch Minoris status entailed, I might not even come close to being a human despite this ideal female appearance on the outside. If this world was indeed the same grimdark universe that I knew well, it would be an understatement to say I was in a whole world of dire troubles. SYRINE's status as a Primarch Minoris should be an imperial state secret of the highest order, and any wrong move going forward might seal my own worse-than-death scenario that comes in thousands of different flavors available here. The world seemed to spin as I pondered on my predicament, and my vision rested upon the second line of my inquiry result, psychopassive. As if answering my unspoken question, a new line of words popped up into my vision. Activate Psychana Activa? Yes/no. With my limited knowledge of Latin, this seemed to roughly translate to active psycho mode. What would happen if I went active? What about the perils of the warp? A part of me wanted to recoil just by thinking what could go wrong, but I was really curious, and since all my abilities' activation thus far seemed to serve me well, I guess there was only one way to find out. It was then I noticed the Stormtroopers finally left. It seemed like Aradus got that matter sorted. No time better than now. This is still a dream, right? I held my breath and selected yes from the prompt. At first, nothing happened. Then, the surroundings went weird, like some hidden locks were switched off and an unworldly quality took over. I felt my senses grow and my field of view, for the lack of proper words, extended. It felt paradoxical, like being very trippy while maintaining your mental clarity at the same time. The sense of connection to the world kept expanding, and a feeling of many unseen windows were opened beyond the senses. My mind struggled with these new sensations, and then I realized there was this strong resonance nearby, so very close. Like a submarine that just turned on its active sonar and received a huge ping reading, I turned to the source of resonance and saw it was Aradus. He was facing me with his jaw dropped. The astropath's existence took on an extra-dimensional quality from my current point of view, rendering him more real than the surroundings, and I could easily pinpoint his exact position even with my eyes closed. So this is how psychers could tell each other apart. There is no hiding from this. Indescribable energy swirled around and inside me. It was gaining strength and seemed to obey my will, at least for now. Mindful of all the horror stories about the warp, I tried my best to keep it under tight control. When I finally got it stabilized, Aradus was still in his stupor, gaping at me. "That light," he murmured. "Light?" I asked. No reply. Was he looking at me or behind me? While I understood Aradus was technically blind, I now knew his psychic sense more than made up for his sight, so I turned around and saw what he meant. Even when visually blocked by many layers of walls, a huge psychic beam could be seen shining from beyond the horizon, shooting into the heavens, its psychic brightness transcending the material plane when one was psychically attuned. The huge silvery golden beam was so beautiful and for some unknown reasons felt familiar. Wait, is that the massive activated psychic beacon they were all talking about? Instinctively I raised my hand, trying to touch and feel it, but that was silly since it was so far away. Just as I was about to laugh at my own silliness, I felt an odd sensation of a connection established with the psychic light. Huh? Not knowing what just happened and with my hand still raised, I slowly turned my palm. Responding to my action, the massive pillar of psychic light actually changed its intensity. Oi oi oi, this is bad, right? What have I done? Panicking, I adjusted the pillar of light back to its original intensity as best I could and tried to sever the weird connection. Luckily it seemed like mental intent was all it took to get things to work with the psychic stuff. I felt the connection disappeared. I hope no one saw that. Wait, Aradus is here. Crap. Not knowing what to do, I turned to face the astropath, only to see him on his knees calling to the Emperor and apologizing to me in a semi-coherent flurry of speech. Dumbfounded again, I stood still as Aradus pressed his forehead down, touching the floor, with tears flowing down cheeks as he begged for forgiveness in his whimpering voice. Eagerly wanting to avoid the stormtroopers barging in again, I turned to Neandra for help, The assassin was there looking at me with a complex expression, but she got the hint. She moved in and put her hand on his back. Master Rain. No one is going to hurt you as long as I am here. As I said, SYRINE is not an enemy, nor will she do anything to you. Her cold, authoritative voice and powerful presence did the trick, and Aradus calmed down a lot after that. Maybe my psychic active mode has something to do with his hysteria? Thinking about that, I tried deactivating Psychana Activa. The power responded to my will and shut itself off. The world went back to normal, which was a huge relief. Looking at the sheer absurdity surrounding me, suddenly I had an epiphany. That was it. Though very rare, this must be one of the extended lucid dream sessions I had read before on the internet. Thinking back, ever since I started role-playing as SYRINE, I never had any food nor drinks and have never gone to the toilet. Dream theory confirmed. Now that this was understood, I just had to let this session run its course and get back to my life. Finally feeling relieved, I knelt to face the weeping astropath at eye level. While he did look kind of pathetic, thinking back on my own experience so far, if it was not for Regalis, I might have embarrassed myself with openly screaming and weeping a few times just today alone. So, I did my best to join Leandra in comforting him. A good thing my current voice was so calm and soothing. Aradus, please. To tell you the truth, I recently just lost most of my memories and need your help. This planet and its people need your help too. Let's work together. He stopped weeping but remained silent. Does he still need an extra push for encouragement? He was calling to the Emperor, right? Sigh, people of this world. I lamented internally and pushed forth with my final sales pitch. Come on, astropath, if not for this world, for the Emperor. Yes. He finally responded by turning to me. Suddenly the frail astropath seemed invigorated with a new lease of purpose, and he said his next statement with a calm conviction. For the Emperor. Aradus Rain was not a particularly gifted astropath. The few colleagues he had always seemed to outshine him both in talents and interpersonal relationships, resulting in him being mostly assigned to be the backup of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica chamber. Ironically, that might be the very reason he was spared from assassination. Unlike his unfortunate colleagues who were at their workstation, Aradus was at his quarters when unknown assailants stormed the Telepathica chamber. An old reinforced panic room saved his life, and it took an Inquisitor to convince him to come out from the hideout. Despite being mediocre in raw talent, Aradus was not a foolish man. Even after being placed in a maximum security arrangement, a part of him was convinced he already was a dead man walking. The assassination of astropaths was a clear attempt to cut off the planet's connection to the wider Imperium, and as the old saying goes, disruption of communication can only mean one thing: a pending invasion. Further adding to his sense of ominous impending doom, Aradus was unable to contact any other Imperial world for reinforcements for reasons unknown. By then the lone astropath had expected the worst. Any moment now, he believed, hostile fleets bearing legions of the lost and damned would appear over a blackened sky to rain death and despair. Over the years of long service, he had caught glimpses of brief reports and tales to know such possibilities were real. Being the sole astropath on the planet made him a marked individual, and even with all the securities provided, he felt his days were numbered. Then the strangest thing happened. Half a day ago a massive psychic light shot up over the horizon. Aradus knew that non-psychers could not see it, but to him, it was as if a new sun had risen. He should have been more afraid, but to his amazement, the light felt familiar to him, like meeting an old friend again but being unable to recall their name. By this time he had already given up on contacting other Imperial worlds and was just happy to stare into the psychic light over the horizon to escape from his troubles. That huge silver-colored pillar of light with a hint of gold made him feel peaceful, and there was a strange sense of contentment knowing he witnessed this beautiful light before his inevitable demise. Aradus was in such a mindset when Thabrus, the Inquisitor who saved his life, visited with two others. One was a female agent who he recognized to never mess with. The other female was a peculiar newcomer who was introduced as SYRINE. The Inquisitor soon left, dropping vague instructions before he did so. SYRINE was soon asking questions about his telepathic craft, something a sanctioned astropath would never willingly share with any unfamiliar individuals, but at this point, Aradus couldn't care less. Following the few recent unusual events, all sense of normality had gone out of the window for him. That said, The teaching experience was refreshing since he was able to share his craft freely with a stranger for the first time. The truth was he had no idea of what was going on anymore. SYRINE was not a psyker, he would know, as psykers could easily tell one another apart from the rest of the mundane population. With that understanding, the futility of this exercise only served to further mystify him, as this was akin to teaching a jellyfish to run, but he enjoyed her company. Even as a blind psyker, Aradus could tell SYRINE was a special individual. Her presence had a soothing effect on him and her voice was pleasing. On top of that, she seemed very intelligent. The questions she asked from time to time cut right at critical points with a hint of a master's level of understanding. In the short time they spent together, his appreciation for her intellect went up a few notches. He imagined her to be beautiful but regretted not being able to see with his vision to verify that hunch. Then the lessons were halted for a meal as his hunger overcame his newfound thrill of teaching. SYRINE politely declined his invitation to join him, so he went for it alone. The servers came with his food. Everything was double-checked for poisons and toxins before he sat down to satisfy his hunger. Halfway through his meal, another unexpected event happened. Plus hello? Plus. SYRINE's voice came through via telepathic means. The strength and intensity of it startled him. Plus was that you, Lady SYRINE? Plus, he sent back. Instantly he got a reply. This time the psychic communication came with overwhelming strength. It was akin to receiving a voice reply from a Lord Halo while standing right next to it. The massive impact made Aradus drop his eating utensils. Flinching, Aradus quickly shot back another communication asking SYRINE to tone down the intensity of her message. Her next reply was an apology, and this time the volume was just right. What amazing raw talents his new student possessed, Aradus thought. Only a few hours after his lessons and she mastered telepathic communication. Just as he was beginning to feel proud of his teachings, only then he remembered, SYRINE was not a psyker. That realization shattered the serenity Aradus enjoyed that day. He felt like being rudely awakened from a sweet dream with haunting death cries of his former colleagues echoing inside his mind. Alarming questions raced one another for his attention as he instinctively took out his las pistol. What sorcery is this? Is SYRINE an agent of the enemy? Is she a heretic that infiltrated this far to replace him from the inside? How can someone who is not a psyker send telepathic messages? His mind searched frantically and found no solid answers, and try as he might, he could not ignore the dark whispers of forbidden tales of demons nagging at the innermost corners of his mind. It was at this point Aradus realized deep down, despite all the pessimism, he really did not want to die. By the time SYRINE came to check him up, he went into a full-blown panic and was ready to discharge his weapon despite his instincts screaming at him that it wouldn't do anything to his target. Then the female agent Neandra validated his guess of her skill by swiftly disarming him in a split second. To his surprise, she vouched for SYRINE's integrity. The commotion caused the stormtroopers who were in charge of his security to barge in. Even in a daze, Aradus realized he would have been dead or incapacitated by now if either Neandra or SYRINE had ulterior motives, so he cooperated and convinced the security to leave. As the stormtroopers left, Aradus was collecting his thoughts as he turned to his guests, and what he sensed made him freeze. SYRINE, once a mundane human presence in his psychic sense, began to change. First, she was suddenly registered as a psyker to his senses, making Aradus wonder if he had gone senile. Then, to his utter bewilderment, he could feel her power growing rapidly. One moment, the level of raw power she exuded reminded him of his ancient mentor, then that quickly changed as she surpassed that and reached the power level of a Primaris psyker he met years ago, but that too was surpassed and her power just kept rising. With his jaw dropped, Aradus witnessed SYRINE's transformation from being psychically inert to an overwhelming presence right before him. He felt the raw power difference between them and instantly understood that she could literally crush him like a bug if that level of psychic might was ever directed at him with intent to kill. Then, like a miracle, Aradus could see SYRINE despite being blind. Her psychic presence was so intense that the powerful resonance between them made her appearance solidify to his psychic senses. Appearing before him was a breathtakingly beautiful human female wearing a simple white robe. Arm-length straight platinum hair flowed gently over her petite shoulders. The most striking feature she had were her large almond-shaped eyes. Grey-colored irises with a tint of golden psychic glow were looking straight at him. Aradus could feel the unfathomable power that lay behind them, Her gaze seemed to pierce through him but carried no malevolence. Looking closer, he noticed SYRINE was surrounded by a familiar faint golden light. "That light," he murmured. "Light?" She echoed his statement. Then, as if just noticing the huge psychic pillar behind her that was shining from beyond the horizon, she turned and looked at it. Wordlessly, she raised a hand and then slowly began turning it around by her wrist. Responding to her action, the psychic light changed its intensity. Watching the unbelievable scene unfold, Aradus finally understood the truth. SYRINE was the link for that huge psychic beacon. She was the master of that light. Before he realized it, Aradus had dropped to his knees. Hot streams of tears flowed uncontrollably down his cheek. "Emperor, preserve us. Who are you?" His shaken voice was soft but clear in the quiet room. Such power, Aradus thought. SYRINE radiated so much power it reminded him of the legends he had heard of demons and saints about their otherworldly presence. Then to his utter horror, he recalled pointing a weapon at the individual before him. My sincerest deepest apologies, I didn't know." Aradus pressed himself further down, his forehead touching the floor, his tears flowing down to the floor and his mind a panicking mess. Following the peculiar pattern that day, Aradus could not for his life understand what was going on, but one thing he knew for certain: whoever SYRINE was, taking his life was but a trivial matter for her. However, not only that did not happen, she instead knelt to his level to talk to him, asking for his assistance and reminding him of his duty to the Emperor while ignoring his transgressions. That deeply moved Aradus. He had personally known people who had lost their lives with much lesser acts of disrespect towards powerful individuals, let alone pointing a weapon and dropping accusations at such a figure. SYRINE had spared him, he was convinced of that fact. And who was he to begin with? A mediocre astropath who had given up on his duties and lost his faith in the Emperor. Such heretical thought, such sin. Yes, he will atone for his sins and his shameful actions later. Now was not the time for self-pity. Duty calls and Aradus the astropath will answer it. He turned to SYRINE, astonished to find her presence had reverted back to a non-psyker again, but this time he knew better. When he probed hard enough he could still just barely feel a hint of that unfathomable might beneath her benevolent aura. The fact that such a powerful figure was in front of him was proof enough that the God Emperor had yet to give up on this world. Aradus was sure of it. Now there was hope in his world, and that extended to this world as well. Steeling his resolve, Aradus replied the only way he could. "Yes," he said, affirming himself to his duties with a level of resolve he had never felt in his entire life. "For the Emperor."